Welcome to Extraterrestrial Reality. The Department of Defense has reorganized its UAP study efforts again. As you might remember, in 2021, they created the Airborne Object Identification and Management Group, or AOIMSG, right? And now they changed the name and changed things up a little bit, and now it's going to be called the All-domain Anomaly Resolution Office, or AARO. Anyway, there was a press release that came out yesterday, and it's very interesting. There's a lot of people out there who were talking about this today because it's actually basically an acknowledgement for probably the first time from the Department of Defense that it's not just UFOs or UAP. There's submerged objects, there's objects in space that are unidentified, and transmedium objects, which are objects that could, go in and out of, fly into water and then or fly out of water. So they changed things up here, and it's I guess maybe if you'd like to call it, maybe another step closer to disclosure. Maybe in some circles people might view it that way. I'm just going to read some of this press release that came out yesterday from the Department of Defense. It says on July 15th, 2022, Deputy Secretary of Defense Kathleen Hicks, in coordination with the Director of National Intelligence, amended her original direction to the Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence and Security by renaming and expanding the scope of the Airborne Object Identification and Management Group, AOIMSG, which, by the way, was a very ugly, tough acronym, to the All-domain Anomaly Resolution Office, or AARO. Well, that's a lot easier. AARO, I like that. Due to the enactment of the National Defense Authorization Act for fiscal year 2022, which included a provision to establish an office in coordination with DNI with responsibilities that were broader than those originally assigned to the AOIMSG. Today, Honorable Ronald Moultrie informed the Department of the establishment of AARO within the Office of the Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence and Security, and named Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick, most recently the Chief Scientist at the Defense Intelligence Agency's Missile and Space Intelligence Center, as the Director of AARO. The mission of AARO will be to synchronize efforts across the Department of Defense and with other United States federal departments and agencies to detect, identify, and attribute objects of interest in, on, or near military installations, operating areas, training areas, special use airspace, and other areas of interest, and, as necessary, to mitigate any associated threats to safety of operations and national security. This includes anomalous, unidentified space, airborne, submerged, and transmedium objects. That's pretty big. I think that's pretty big. Actually, you hear this coming from the Department of Defense. They're basically acknowledging out there that, it's not just flying objects, it's submerged objects and transmedium objects, and also space objects, unidentified space objects. And, okay, and we know, I'll just say this here, we know that some of these objects, they could be, that some of these things, right, could be from a foreign government, right? Could be some devices that have been developed by foreign governments, but not transmedium objects like that people have seen. These things have been around a long time. These transmedium objects, these submerged objects. I don't know what, I'm not really sure what the difference is because I'm not sure. If something could fly in and out of water, then that would be considered a transmedium object, not a submerged object. So I guess if you would identify a submerged unidentified object as submerged if you only see it in the water, I guess. I guess maybe sometimes I'm imagining that maybe some Navy vessels or submarines come in contact with objects that are underwater that they can't explain, that do things that other underwater objects would be unable to do. I'm assuming that's what this means, and that's what that covers. And then, of course, there's the transmedium objects, which, by the way, have been observed for 75 years now. The transmedium objects people have seen these, particularly in the military, since 1947. in 1947, there were lots of reports and where flyers were, stationed in the North Pole flying around, right? And they would see stuff flying in and out of the ocean. They would see things sitting on the ice packs up there, right? And at that time we didn't even have jets yet, and these things have been seen all the way back since 1947. But now, after all these years, they're actually acknowledging, yes, there's transmedium objects. It took 75 years, but here we are, folks. 75 years later, the United States government is basically acknowledging the fact that there are transmedium objects. And although there have been reports, like I said, dating back all the way to 1947. Let me continue here. Then it says the AARO Executive Council, led by Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence and Security Ronald Moultrie, will provide oversight and direction to the AARO along these primary lines of effort. 1. Surveillance, collection, and reporting. 2. System capabilities and design. 3. Intelligence operations and analysis. 4. Mitigation and defeat. 5. Governance. 6. Science and technology. Now, I'll leave the link here so you can check it out yourself. And there's some other press releases that you could click on too and read with a little bit more information. But I guess the bottom line is, to me, to see that they're basically acknowledging, that these things aren't just flying around or at the atmosphere here. They're coming in from space. They're hanging inside the ocean. They're flying in and out of the ocean. They could do those kind of things. I mean, come on, we don't have that technology, right? Maybe we have something right? But we don't have the kind of technology that's been described back in 1947. Things that could easily go in and out of water, like people have reported. But what's interesting is, I was thinking about this. This is a long line of different unclassified investigation parts of the unclassified efforts to research UFOs over the years. This is just yet another one on the long line. Actually, as a lot of you know, back in 1948 there was Project Sign. In 49 there was Project Grudge. From 1952 to 1969 there was Project Blue Book, and then there was the Advanced Aerospace Weapon Systems Application Program, as we now know, called OSWAP, which was established in 2007 and then had its name changed to the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, or ATIP. And that went from 2007 to 2012. And then in 2020, there was the Naval Intelligence established the Unidentified Aerial Phenomena Task Force, or UAPTF. And then that got absorbed into the AOIMSG, right, in 2021. And now AOIMSG has become AARO in 2022. So they've been investigating these things for many, many years under different names. Now, the first three, Sign, Grudge, and Blue Book, that involved the difference between those and these other ones, these other unclassified investigations, is that those first three, the citizens reported a lot of these things too. It wasn't just reports from military personnel, because that's what these latest ones are basically. It's just military personnel reports, and then they take it from there to study this. Okay, now, but if you go back to, Project Blue Book, I mean, back in 1969 when Blue Book closed its doors, shut down, right? They came to these conclusions, and this is really funny considering what's going on right now, all these years later. Okay, number 1, no UFO reported, investigated, and evaluated by the Air Force was ever an indication of threat to our national security. 2, there was no evidence submitted to or discovered by the Air Force that sightings categorized and unidentified represented technological developments or principles beyond the range of modern scientific knowledge. And 3, there was no evidence indicating that sightings categorized as unidentified were extraterrestrial vehicles. I have to beg to differ on that. I mean, there were a lot of different things that Blue Book looked into, particularly the 1964 Lonnie Zamora incident. I mean, what else could that have been? I mean, the guy saw this egg-shaped craft landed, and there was these humanoid beings with feet 3 inches long. I mean, come on. Who had to be extraterrestrial? What else could it have been? And they know it was. Of course, there was all kinds of other things that they investigated. They never, and they said in 1969 when they shut down that there was nothing was ever shown to be extraterrestrial. Well, and then underneath all this, underneath Project Sign, underneath Project Grudge, underneath Project Blue Book, and all these other things, there's Majestic 12, which was established in 47. I don't know if it's still called that today, or maybe it went through several name changes over the decades. But maybe it's still called MJ12. Who knows, right? But let's, for the sake of argument, we'll still continue with Majestic 12. That group knows. That people in that secret group know, top secret, above top secret, they know that it is extraterrestrial for a fact. All these other things, Project Blue Book, Grudge, and Sign, they were basically put together to assuage concerns of the public. To come back and say, oh no, that's nothing. Don't worry about it. Either something was misidentified, or it was a hoax, or the person who saw it's a crackpot, or the person who saw it was drunk out of his gourd. That's basically what. So, and then they would explain just about everything, and provide a prosaic explanation for all the UFO sightings. But here we are all these years later. It's just so funny to think that Project Blue Book was saying that there was no threat to our national security when they closed in 1969. But yet here we are over 50 years later, and they're still trying to determine whether these things are a threat. Now think about that for a minute. They closed the book in 1969. Now, apparently there were some other classified studies going on in the military that weren't as secret as Majestic 12, that looked at this kind of stuff, I guess, to assuage the concerns of military personnel. But I'm not sure, between the closing of Blue Book and some of these newer, more recent efforts that basically focused on military sightings, so there had to be other ones, to assuage the concerns of people in the military that were still seeing these things, even though the Blue Book determined that, there's no threat to national security and whatnot. But here we are, still, like I said, in 1969, and when this closed down, when Blue Book closed down in December of 1969, I was a 1-year-old kid sitting in a playpen, going goo goo gaga. Right. Here we are now. I'm a 53-year-old fossil, and they're still saying the same stuff. They're still trying to determine that, they're trying to determine whether these things are a threat to national security or not. That's over 50 years later, when they said over 50 years ago that there is no threat to national security. See, all of this stuff is to keep the public calm down and don't worry about it. There's nothing to it. We're taking care of it. We're looking into it. We're going to identify it. It's just, like, somebody said recently, it's like a dog and pony show. It's like, look at the shiny object over here, right? Don't worry about it. Nothing to see here. We're looking into it. We'll make a determination. Come on. This is going on too long now. It's just ridiculous. But I'm glad. At least it seems like they're coming. They're coming around a little bit, it seems, right? The fact that they're admitting that they're acknowledging, okay, there's transmedium objects out there. There's objects, unidentified space objects out there. There's unidentified submerged objects out there. We're going to look into them, and we're going to try to figure out what they are. And meanwhile, right, a lot of these people, right, that are in the military, a lot of these people probably have no idea what Majestic 12 knows. Like, some of them might know of the existence of Majestic 12, right? They can't say that, right? Even if they do know, they might not even know that. But they know that there's something, and that's something. There's that again. The group that's involved in that, it's above top secret. That's been studying this thing since 1947 secretly, right? And and they're not coming public for whatever reason, right? Take your pick. Right? Why they're keeping this secret? Could be for who knows? We talk about that all the time. I mean, the absolute number one reason for keeping this quiet, right? Who knows? Panic, intentions, of the visitors, military reasons. I mean, that could be it. I mean, who knows? But again, they're keeping this quiet. But what's interesting is that Project Sign, the original unclassified study into this. The unclassified that was didn't have the information like MJ12 did. That's what's interesting about that is that came to a conclusion, right? That Project Sign came to the conclusion that in fact it was extraterrestrial.